Final Fantasy can be pretty complicated, but not if you know how to play. When you first start a new game, it's going to ask you to create your party of 4 classes, and I'd recommend taking the warrior out of the lineup immediately. It's too expensive to gear, and really doesn't offer the party a whole lot in terms of magic. As for the thief, it's a little bit too overpowered if you ask me, so take that out of the party as well for a better experience. Even though he can't use magic, I would still bring a monk. He's so cheap to buy equipment for that you'll have plenty of funds left over for all those other magic users. And then of course the red mage. He can do a little bit of everything, so he's too potent not to bring, although he's no thief, so he won't ruin the game for you. Finally, don't forget the most important step, naming all your characters so you're more motivated not to let them die. Motivation can be a powerful tool, and Final Fantasy is no exception. Okay, now that we're finally in game, I would highly recommend skipping the introductory sequence. It just makes the plot more convoluted than it already is. Speak with the king of Castle Cornelia, who only half believes that you're the hero's legend, until you rescue his daughter, the princess. Things might get tough here, so head into town to buy some magic and equipment. Honestly, the magic here is not good, but you can buy it if you want. Also make sure to pick up a nunchaku for the monk, because it says it makes his attack go up, so it should. Head north to the Chaos Shrine to find ex-Cornelia Knight Garland with Princess Sarah. Get ready for an incredibly tough boss fight. Nothing seems to work on this guy. Honestly, it'll take a bit of luck. But if you do manage to defeat him, Princess Sarah is saved and the king officially recognizes you as the 4 Warriors of Light, although this is a pretty big assumption on the developer's part as our party doesn't have any warriors in it. The princess also hands you an optional loot for some reason. Anyway, the king finally has the bridge fixed and we head north across it, and now that the tutorial's over, we can officially start the game. There's a town to the northeast called Provoca that's been overrun by pirates. The only way you can save them is to fight an even more difficult boss fight than the last one against a bunch of hard-working pirates who would never sleep on the job. If you manage to win this fight and kill his entire crew, the pirate Captain Bick is genuinely sorry, not just because he lost. To prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt, he gives you his boat. Use it to sail south to Elfheim, where we learn in a huge plot twist that this is just a Legend of Zelda spin-off. Anyway, the magic here is expensive and bad, so head into the Elven Castle to learn that the prince has been asleep for years. Because everyone in this game lies to you constantly, you should corroborate their statements with your own eyes and visit the prince himself. If you head over to the Western Keep, the king tells you that his crown was stolen by the same Astos that put the prince to sleep. Thankfully, the crown is in the marsh to the south in a very straightforward cave, where the enemies don't have any irksome status effects to apply. Once you have the crown and you bring it back to the Elf King, in a shocking twist, the Elf King is Astos. This is actually pretty clearly a fun cameo appearance by the Dark Elf from Final Fantasy IV. If the party defeats Astos, they get the crystal eye he stole from Matoya, the witch that lives in the cave north of Castle Cornelia. The music here is pretty terrible, so get out as quickly as you can, but there are some pretty funny brooms here that speak nonsense that definitely doesn't mean anything. Anyway, Matoya doesn't seem to need the crystal eye, but she apparently needs the Jolt Tonic even less, so she happily trades. Take the potion to the Elf Prince and voila, he wakes up after an incredibly easy and non-roundabout series of tasks. He hands over the Mystic Key for your troubles, which opens all sorts of treasure from almost every location we've been to. The rewards are mediocre, especially the pointless nitro powder, but all the backtracking is really healthy for the plot. Our next destination is northwest of Castle Cornelia, Mount Dwerger, where the dwarfs live. There is some more treasure here guarded by a Mystic Key lock, but everyone's supposed favorite dwarf Narek steals your nitro powder and sets off an explosion in the cave. Fortunately, these guys are experts, and they knew that obviously the explosion wouldn't hurt the cave that they're in, but rather destroy a specific segment of land a ways away. Use this to your advantage and sail west through the newly made canal to the city of Melmond, which is completely in ruins and no one will tell you why. There's a named scholar here who will probably never be of any plot value, and the magic is just terrible. So you figure out entirely on your own to go to the southern peninsula where you find the Cavern of Earth. This dungeon is as simple as they come, and the vampire within is clearly the Fiend of Earth by his sheer amount of health. There's a star ruby in the treasure chest and an irrelevant evil stone slab to the north. Head outside and into the cave further west to let the predictable use of the star ruby play out. The sage who lives beyond breaks the news to you that the vampire wasn't the Fiend of Earth and gives you an Earth Rod. Now, in what many players cite as one of the greatest moments of the game, we get to go back through the Cavern of Earth to the vampire's lair and proceed through 2 more floors. Here, we at last come across one of the 4 elemental fiends, the Fiend of Earth, Lich. As the first real big boss of the game, this guy hits pretty hard. You'll have to be careful as there's no way you can straight up out-damage him. If you defeat the Lich, the crystal is restored and the party learns how to express joy. I will say it's a little annoying that the game just tells the player where to go next, not even letting them explore on their own, but go ahead and go to Crescent Lake in the southeastern corner of the world. I do want to say I love the creativity behind this town's name, and finally, some good magic. Take your time with that, but once you're ready, head to the rehearsing dancers in the eastern woods. One of them gives you a canoe, because honestly, what could be more useful? And another one is Lucan, the one who made the prophecy about us in the first place. He says to return to him once you restore the 4 crystals, and it is imperative that you do. For now, we're going to do exactly what everyone's been telling us to do and ignore the fire crystal, head north instead, and use our canoe to enter the Cavern of Ice. Here we go, a really brutal dungeon, but at the end you find the Levy Stone, which you can just walk up and take. If you do manage to fall through the floor, climb back up some stairs and drop down to it from above. Now be careful, because there is a boss. In any case, if you accidentally bring the Levy Stone to this desert down here, it will bring an airship out of the ground, which will make your journey a little more convenient, I guess. The first place you are going to want to go is this specific dragon cave, and I would ignore all the rest. You'll find Bahamut here, king of the dragons, and he wants you to prove your courage to him. Naturally, head to the Citadel of Trials to the northeast, which has a very convenient parking spot right next to it. You barely have to walk. Inside, a man acknowledges the crown that we certainly meant to keep, and we begin the trial by stepping on a throne. I'd hardly call this trial a puzzle because it really doesn't matter which ones you step on. It seems completely random, and eventually you'll get there. At the end, you find the rat's tail, but be careful, the real trial is this big baddie on the way out. If you survive, take the universally agreed upon symbol of courage, the rat's tail, to Bahamut, who will reward you with new sprites. Frankly, a welcome change, and well worth the trouble. Now I guess it's time to head back to Mount Gulg for something involving the fire crystal, where interestingly the red tiles will make your characters glow when you walk on them. After a pretty quick trek though, you'll find Merilith, the Fiend of Fire, who will take some of your most innovative strategies to defeat, especially with those new sprites weighing you down. Now that we've released the fire crystal and obtained an airship, there's almost nowhere left to go, so head to Onrak in the northwest, a very normal town where people love legs, protect barrels, and mention their father's caravans in the west. Not that we needed any help finding the caravan in the desert, but once you get there, buy the ferry from the merchant like a regular customer. As I'm sure you've guessed by now, we have to bring the ferry to a town in the northeast surrounded by mountains that we've never been to before called Gaia, where it is freed and presents us with oxyale. Back in Onrak, the woman guarding the barrel now sees the oxyale we have and permits us to use the barrel to get to the sunken shrine where the water crystal is. Fortunately for us, the game is very clear about who or what she is as she floats off and fades away. Down in the sunken shrine, more awful music, but otherwise it's not too bad. Just don't bother going upstairs, there's nothing there but mean mermaids and a stone that we'll never need. The Fiend of Water, Kraken, is on the bottom floor of the shrine. Watch out for his ink move, it can blind your characters and be especially devastating against your melee fighters. Well, now that we've released the Crystal of Water, head back to Melman to talk to this scholar that we've never met, who for some reason now all of a sudden can teach us an ancient language. At least the learning process is pretty accurate in terms of time frame. Before we proceed, don't forget to return to Gaia to buy some incredibly high-damaging black magic spells. Also take this opportunity to sail directly into a waterfall by Onrak. Here we finally meet the creature synonymous with fantasy titles, a robot, and he gives us a cube. Now we fly east to the final town we haven't visited yet, which also has a great parking spot. I don't see exactly why we had to learn a new language, because everyone here speaks in the same tongue that we do. They do mention Sid though, so we know we're back in the Final Fantasy universe. Someone also gives us a chime, which is nice I guess, and there's a magic shop that's pretty hard to miss, but probably because it doesn't sell anything good. In any case, moving on from the Lufinians, we head to the Mirage Tower, where we meet more robots, finally. The Warp Cube lets us ascend to the Flying Fortress, where you should make sure to pick up this really cool, albeit useless looking rock. Another robot lets you use his device to view a great light show that's not really related to the plot, but it's a fun pit stop. Ultimately, after a pretty straightforward segment that doesn't involve wandering at all, you'll find Tiamat, the Fiend of Wind, at the top of the fortress. As with every other boss in the game, the most difficult of the four fiends will require you to mix up your tactics significantly in order to win. No real advice can be given. Without talking to anyone or revisiting anywhere, head straight back to the Chaos Shrine where you will be inexplicably plunged into the past. There are bats that can talk, but that's probably unrelated. To proceed now, you'll need to jam out on that loot that of course you didn't forget about because it is one of the main story elements. As you continue on, you'll notice some of the floor tiles are actually bugged and will force random encounters, though the enemies do look a little familiar. I think they show up in FF4 or maybe 9. Look out for one treasure here that you'll want to be sure to pick up. It is quite strong, but would be even better if it weren't exclusively for black mages. We finally reached the end of the Chaos Shrine and there's another Cornelian Knight, who definitely isn't Garland because we defeated him a long time ago. We learn his name is Chaos and he has 4 elemental attacks which look really neat but always miss. You'll make quick work of this guy if you make sure to use your black mage's kill spell, which never fails to land. Now we've saved the world, though the ending informs us that because we did, none of this ever happened. So we didn't. In the end, I would give this game a rating of 1 out of 1 Final Fantasy game at the time it came out. Though I might have to add a 3/4 onto the end of that because 3 of the 4 crystals really didn't get their fair allotment of time.